Hello, hello. Welcome to tonight's training on uncomfortable conversations, how and why to talk with MAGA family members. It is that time of year. The holidays are upon us. It's just the season now. So that means that we're going to be surrounded by people that we may not talk to that often. We may be bracing ourselves for uncomfortable conversations, but right now we're hopeful. In the season of hope, we are hopeful because we see so many people defecting. And we want to play on that. So we're excited that you're here with us tonight. Make sure that you are joining us in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from. And to start us off easy, let us know what your favorite holiday dish is. Mine is called pan con pollo or pan con pavo or pan con chupe. It is a Salvadoran dish. We stew our poultry. We marinate it, we stew it in a salsa, and we serve it on bolillo rolls with all sorts of veggies, with all sorts of delightful toppings. And also, we drench those sandwiches in the salsa that they're roasted in. So I'm a really big fan of that for the holidays. That is our family tradition. Let us know what your favorite dishes are in the chat because we have a heavy chat tonight and we want to get y'all nice and comfortable, getting in your good feelings as we prepare for tonight's very heavy conversation. And also, as we prepare for this heavy conversation, I want to thank you for being a part of it. This is not easy work, and this is not something that everybody wants to do. So we're really excited that you want to do this work because it's important. So let's get into it. I do want to just give you all a heads up. We are watching the chat. If you are being unkind, if you are spamming, if you are being abusive in the chat, we are heavy-handed on the ban hammer. You will be blocked and you won't be able to comment anymore. Real bummer. We want you to be in the chat. This is a place for community, so allow that community to thrive. We also want to make sure that we are offering curiosity with each other in the chat. So assume each other's best intentions, if you will. If you need captions tonight to better experience this training, please join us on Facebook. Facebook is going to be the better place to get captions. YouTube is hit or miss, but Facebook does have captions on live video. So finally, we do have a Q&A at the end of the session. We spare about 10 minutes at the end for your questions. So make sure you ask those questions. We are watching the chat and we will pull aside those questions. They won't get lost, don't worry. Now, like I said, tonight we have a jam-packed agenda, but I do want to ground us in an understanding of why it is important to try with people that we don't agree with our MAGA family or Trump voting families. We know that the idea of building bridges and offering somewhat soft places to land is kind of controversial. And honestly, it isn't for everyone. MAGA ideology has been incredibly hurtful and openly harmful. And it's hard to imagine why those of us who have felt that hurt would extend grace like this sometimes. Because honestly, it's vindicating to point and laugh and say, you voted for this. Now you get to suffer because I told you this would happen. But the reality is that not all Trump voters are full-blown MAGA. And even MAGA supporters are feeling disillusioned, disappointed, and could be looking for the door. And we all have the opportunity to show the people close to us the door. After all, no one is more persuasive than the family we already know and trust, like friends and family. Because the alternative is pushing them further and harder into authoritarianism that harms us all. Because ultimately, what MAGA is for so many people is community. If we want people to abandon MAGA, they need to know that they won't be abandoned too. Now, again, this isn't for everyone. After this session, if you think that this isn't going to protect your peace, that's all right. But if you want to counter the narrative, we're excited to give you the tools to make it happen. So let's talk about tonight's agenda. We're going to be talking with someone who has left MAGA and why. We're going to be talking about the tools and the tactics to approach uncomfortable conversations effectively. We're going to model these conversations, and then we're going to hear from someone who has seen this and done this in practice. Then we're going to get to your questions. So I also want to get us started with a tool to keep in your back pocket for when things get tense and you can feel yourself getting agitated or dysregulated. Because again, this is hard work. So there are 3 things you want to reconnect with, and it's the body, the mind, and the spirit. I know for me, sometimes this can feel a little campy, but at the end of the day, this is a tool to re-regulate yourself and make sure that you are staying focused in the moment and calm. Being the calm in the storm is actually so helpful for the other people that we're trying to bring along with us. So, to reconnect with the body, there are a lot of different things you can do. You can take deep breaths. You can check in with your 5 senses. So, what do I see? What do I smell? What is something I can touch? What's something I can taste? What's something I can feel? What's something I can hear? I don't know if that was all 5 senses, but I think you get the idea. Check in with your 5 senses. So that brings you back into your body. And you can also tense and release. So just tense up all your muscles and release them. Tense them up and release them with a deep breath. That can bring you back into your body so that you are focused on where you are physically, which then allows you to reconnect with your mind. Think about, why are you bothered by this? Why do you feel emotionally threatened? Why do you feel dysregulated? Think about what that is. You might not be able to resolve it in that moment, but at least you are thinking about it and not reacting to it. And then finally, reconnect with your spirit. What's your light at the end of the tunnel? Why are you trying in the first place? And why should or shouldn't you keep trying? Because at a certain point, sometimes you do need to protect your peace, and it's okay to disengage. So, given these tools, I hope that you'll take them with you. Reconnect with your body, your mind, and your spirit when you are feeling agitated and dysregulated. And make sure that those are your guiding stars as you approach uncomfortable conversations. Now I'm excited to introduce you to our first speaker, Rich Logis, who's a former MAGA activist, a volunteer, and a pundit. He founded his nonprofit, Leaving MAGA, in 2024 as a new community for those who leave the MAGA movement, who have doubts about their support for Trump, and for friends and family of those in MAGA. On his Leaving MAGA website, media appearances, and in person, Rich has shared the compelling story of his odyssey and what has led him to leave MAGA in August of 2022. He's most recently contributed to the Midas Touch Network, so we are very excited to welcome Rich Logis.
Thank you, Risa. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I would like to apologize to all of those watching for my past MAGA activism. Had I met all of you when I was in the MAGA community, I would have deemed you existential threats to my life and my livelihood and my family and my country. And for that, I'm sorry. You did not deserve to be spoken of that way. In 2015, I was a very politically lonely person. I believe that the two parties were the same. I felt that they failed to represent most of the country. And when then candidate Donald Trump came on the scene, even though he ran as a Republican, what enticed me about his campaign is that he ran as an actual outsider without any government, military, or political experience. And at first I was curious about his campaign, but as the months went on, I found myself increasingly nodding in agreement with some of his campaign points, especially about economic trauma and hardships for so many Americans. And it was in early 2016 when I decided to volunteer for the campaign. And I did a lot of grassroots work. I showed people where to get registered. I phone banked. I recruited people to vote for Trump. And I even contributed part of the call script for the campaign. So after the victory in 2016, I got deeper and deeper into the MAGA community. I became a MAGA pundit. I sought the attention of the president. I was professionally producing a podcast. I was writing for a number of MAGA friendly media outlets. I had bylines in places like Fox and the Federalist. I even wrote for a website, World Net Daily, which is the site that originated the Obama birther conspiracy. And I spent all of the years of the first term of the president as a MAGA soldier, feeling that I was on the right side of history and that I was a real American, and that everybody against us in opposition were fake Americans and were those existential threats that I mentioned at the outset. I was also a sponsor of Trump groups. I spoke at them. I donated to Trump groups. There was no mistaking my devotion and allegiance to the president and to the MAGA movement. There were a number of cracks, though, that eventually led to my leaving of MAGA. There was the president's mismanagement of the pandemic. There was January 6th. There were the stolen election lies. I never believed that we actually had won the election. But those reasons were not enough for me initially to leave. There were a few accelerants. The first was my governor, Ron DeSantis, who platformed COVID anti-vaxxers in the summer of 2021. And then there was another accelerant, which was on May 24th, 2022, which was the Uvalde, Texas school shooting. And it was subsequent to Uvalde when I quietly left MAGA. But there was something that was really gnawing at me because I was always so unapologetically public in my support for Trump. I felt that I needed to be unapologetically public in my renunciation of the movement. And it was on August 30th of 2022 when I wrote a mea culpa. And in that article, I said that I was sorry for my support of Trump and MAGA, that I wanted to apologize to anyone I may have hurt with my deeds, words, and rhetoric. And the God's honest truth is that after I wrote that apology, I never thought that anybody would care. But it turned out that people did care, and instantaneously I received message after message from friends and family of those in MAGA, very, very desperate to try to rekindle and rejuvenate the relationships that they once had with their MAGA identified close ones. And born from that apology was our organization leaving MAGA, and we're now in our second year. So I'm very honored to be here tonight. I'm hoping that the stratagems that we present are going to reduce some of the stress with the upcoming holiday season. I do want to say in our relationships to our friends and family before we get on to our next speaker is I don't expect anyone to coddle their MAGA identified friends and family. And it's not incumbent upon anyone to have to be on the receiving end of abuse. But we're going to be here tonight to try to restore some of those relationships that existed before MAGA. And my hope is that it will relieve all of you tonight of the pressures of feeling like you have to change your MAGA identified friend or loved one. Only an individual can change. I'd like to think that I'm living proof that it is possible to change. So very happy to be with everyone tonight. Looking forward to a very productive evening.
Thank you so much, Rich. It's important to understand why we bother building bridges, and you are a really extraordinary demonstration of just why we want to do this work. So thank you so much for being here. Our next guest is going to talk through narrative tools and tactics to approach these conversations effectively without putting others on the defensive, and instead steering them to ask questions. Jess St. Louis is a white lesbian trans woman who works as a narrative strategist and somatics practitioner and calls Greensboro, North Carolina home. She has over a decade of experience in organizing, narrative strategy, and leadership development, and is currently spending her time collaborating with organizations like the Carolina Federation and the Center for Story-Based Strategy, running the Transformative Communicators Embodying Leadership program, and offering one-to-one leadership coaching. She's a contributing co-author to Liberation Stories, Building Narrative Power for 21st Century Movements, published by the New Press, and she has her work published in Autostraddle. She has served as the coordinator with Reframe and has also worked with Roadmap Consulting, the U.S. Human Rights Network, the Racial Justice Action Center, and more. You can find her at Somatics Strategy, Somatics and Strategy on Instagram, or somaticsandstrategy.com, and we will pop those up on the screen. Welcome, Jess.
Welcome, everybody. Good to be here tonight, and thank you, Risa and Rich, for talking beforehand. My name is Jess. I'm based out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I've been organizing inside of the U.S. South, and I'm so glad to be here talking with all of y'all on this Women's March mass call about how to have uncomfortable conversations and why that's important to help organize and invite more people to join the freedom side, right? And so while I do narrative strategy and communications work, I always want to ground myself in organizing wisdom. And one of the pieces of organizing wisdom that I love is from a woman named Anne Braden, who was an anti-racist organizer was born in Alabama, did a lot of work in Kentucky and across the South. And in 1966, she wrote this piece, and inside of it, she said, "Any organizer worth their salt listens a long time before they speak. And they learn to adopt their approaches to the people that they're working with, to their life situations," right? And that we know that changing white supremacist attitudes don't happen both overnight or through logical argument, but when people have new experiences. And our task is to figure out how to tell stories that create an experience for people, and at the same time, continue to find ways to plug them in to connect what they care about with an anti-authoritarian, feminist, pro-democracy vision for the world. And so it's that's where I really ground myself as a student of the civil rights movement and the Black freedom struggle inside the U.S. South, and why conversations like these are so important. And so to kind of get a little bit more into this, why this might be important is because how meaning is made is through stories that have been repeated over time, right? That keep on reinforcing a specific idea or belief, right? So there's a bunch of, you can think about stories about, even about, say, sharks, right? What taught you that sharks were dangerous? I think for many of us, it was Jaws, right? But there's also Sharknado, and there's all these news stories, and they keep on adding up to the stories that shark kill people. The actual truth is, sharks kill way less people than mosquitoes, right? And even if we know that, we're probably more scared of a shark than a mosquito. I know, at least I know I am, right? And so we have to think about narratives and stories in these ways, right? And one of the other things that's true about people, and research has shown, is that people can hold many narratives and many beliefs at the same time, right? Sometimes contradictory ones, right? So there could be a narrative that democracy is the most important thing about America, and they might also believe at the same time that any critique of Donald Trump is anti-American. And I want to be clear that these pieces of meaning aren't about truth, right? But they're about meanings and how they make sense of the world, right? And so our task as community members, family members, and organizers, for those of us who do that work, is to help people make sense of the contradictions in ways that invite people towards us based on the values or beliefs or longings that they also hold and that we share, right? And so I think that's really important for us to do. And so I want to talk a little bit about what generally works and what doesn't. And I want to put a little bit of a disclaimer on there, right? Which is that as a communicator, I know that how you talk to people really matters about your audience. And since I don't know your family members the way you do, right? Please take what works, right? And then leave behind what doesn't, right? And so take what feels useful here and leave what doesn't. So the first thing is lead with values. Get really curious about the people you're talking to, about the values that they hold and why they matter to them. This both helps you understand them better and also identify values that may be useful to also invite them away from authoritarian thinking, away from MAGA thinking, right? Towards a more pro-democracy, feminist, and anti-racist future, right? And when you enter into the conversation after listening, right, you can also articulate why those values matter to you. The second is, I think it's really important for those of us to actively, proactively name race, class, and gender. And link the values that you're holding to the values of all people, right? Because they might be feeling the pinch of Trump's economy, or they might have some kind of belief in their own bodily autonomy, right? To actively braid their interest with the interest of others lays the groundwork for solidarity, right? As a key value. And the truth is that, like, even if we think it might be easier to be silent on some of those issues or some of those identity issues around race, class, and gender, if we're not the ones talking about it, who is? It'll be the MAGA talking heads and other folks who keep on reinforcing really harmful ideas about people. And so it's on us to also be on the offensive and proactively connect to a vision of a world of freedom across race, class, and gender for people. We also, one of the things that I know about storytelling and communication work is that stories are what moves people. Tell a story about where the Trump or the MAGA agenda actually threatens and is in conflict with their own values. And maybe in addition to their own material well-being too, right? And so one story may work and might fall flat. You can also try again by telling a different story, right? We have to believe that the people that we're talking to have a stake in being free from authoritarianism and being free from Trumpism, right? Even when they benefit from or are insulated from the worst effects. We have to invite them into the, we have to believe that they have a stake in what we care about too, right? And I think it's also important to acknowledge, like, if none of these tactics work, that is okay. And there are things to also pay attention to, right? If people are fighting with you, escalating the conversation, if they're freezing, if they're shutting down or leaving, if they're appeasing but lightly agreeing with you in a way that you're like, no, it isn't authentic, that's fine. You can also wrap up the conversation. Because when those moments are happening, fight, freeze, appease are happening, those are threat responses. And it's really hard for our brain to take in new information when we feel like we're under threat, even if that threat is not true or not true, right? Real time or not, right? And so I think that I want to say that doesn't mean that what you did wasn't useful at all, right? Because changing minds can happen over time, right? And the story that you told may connect to another story they hear later that connects to similar issues. And that can all become part of the path that helps lead people out in a way from MAGA and towards the kind of future that we all care about. And then lastly, like, I think to be honest and be human with them, right? Like, when we're being fake, we can kind of feel that, right? And so if we are able to be like, hey, this is hurtful, or I disagree, and you may not be intending to be hurtful to me or other people, but you can actually name that. In my experience, not all the time, but in my experience, many people don't want to hurt other people. And I think one of the other things that is coming to my mind here is that that kind of fight, freeze, appease dynamic, if that's coming up for you, that's also a good place to slow down and kind of exit the conversation, because we won't be as effective if we're not really being present and able to listen to people and also invite them to move. So some things that are generally, I would argue, are not the best things to do. First thing is that to not shame the person that you're talking to. When shame arises, people want to hide and disconnect usually, or lash out, And again, they're not able to take in new information, and shames the stories in those heads. And it makes sense that we feel really angry at people that were hurt because they've been accomplices to really horrible actions. Yes. And it's true, like Trump has engaged in sexual assault. Trump has been a part of war crimes. Trump has done a lot of incredibly harmful things to many of our communities that disappeared our neighbors, our friends, and loved ones, right? Put many of our rights at risk. It makes sense that we are angry. It makes sense that we are hurt. And what we know is that shame is it just doesn't move people, right? And so, like, if it really shuts people down, right? Instead, we actually want to invite people into us, like, when we can, and I think Rich did a really beautiful job, is taking responsibility for what was theirs. And that's vulnerable to do. And that's hard to do when you feel shame, right? It's hard to do when we don't feel connected to the person that's talking to us. And also, we might not be the right person to talk to those people. And that's totally okay, right? The second thing that's useful, not helpful, is telling people to do their own research. Because what we know about the internet is that doing their own research can lead them down pathways that reinforces MAGA and reinforces authoritarianism, right? Especially if their algorithms on their social media pages or their favorite search engine tend to send them to the same right-wing sources, right? And that isn't actually helpful. And so instead, what I would offer in that moment is ask them if they'd like to learn more, and then share with them specific articles or essays that connect back to the values that you were sharing, right? And again, someone was saying in the chat, like, confirmation bias. Yeah, like, and so our task is to actually give them what they need to know. And again, that's really important, instead of telling them to do their own research. And this is a hard one, I think, for many of us. I know I've struggled with this sometimes. And I have to be thinking about what's my role and what's my goal in the interaction I'm having with people. But one of the things I know that I found to be true is that people don't like to be treated like they're stupid or like they don't know anything, right? No one likes feeling duped. No one likes when someone's like, I don't see you as a full person with a whole lives and ways to make meaning in the world. Right? One, part of it is it just can bring up shame. And two, there are probably reasons why they believe what they believe. And just be clear, that doesn't mean that what they believe isn't harmful, right? Or the reasoning is bad, right? But we have to kind of get curious about who convinced you. Why do you believe those things? And then why that felt true or right, and why they trust those people. And our task is to help raise the contradictions, like those people are actually acting in ways that are different from the values you were hearing, you say you care about, right? And they may have a really hard time not making that connection, right? And so you can, like, you have your reasons for believing what you believe. And, like, in the end, like, if all we did was saying, we disagree, we think these actions are harmful, and I believe in your possibility to do better, I think that's really important, right? And so I think and again, like, we may not be the right person to do this specific intervention. We might not be and we might not be the messengers that need to hear it from, right? But again, if meaning is made through various stories that I've repeated over time, they hear from us, they hear from their neighbor, they hear from their friend, they find more ways to kind of get invited out, they may find ways to leave and exit MAGA, right? And so I think the last thing I would say in this moment as an organizer is our family members are important to people to talk to, but I would also say that like they're not the only people we need to organize. And so maybe having this conversation with our family isn't the right move, but maybe what we do is we organize and talk to our neighbors. We go canvassing with organizations, and we continue to do work to invite more people to join the freedom side with us. And so those are some of my lessons that I found to be work in my organizing and my communications work. And I think it's important to have in this organizing work. So I think that's really important. And it's an honor to be here with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Jess. This is such great information. And I asked in the chat, we are going to be modeling this because what is theory without application? So I am really excited to welcome Rich and Jess back because we are going to do some conversation modeling. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a conversation. I'm going to be the organizer family member, and Rich is going to be our MAGA family member. And we're going to first demonstrate what doesn't work. So we're going to start with, how about America first? And then Jess is also going to offer some feedback as we go through this conversation. So if there's anything you want me to hit the pause button on, just say pause and we'll let you get into it.
I won't be particularly angry, but I'll start by saying, Aunt Jess, Aunt Risa, I don't understand why Democrats care about illegal aliens more than they do about Americans. Taking care of Americans is what America First is all about.
Well, that's not true. I mean, like, undocumented immigrants are part of the fabric of our communities. They're taxpayers themselves, and they don't get any of the benefits from paying those taxes either. So they're taxed without representation while still living here and contributing to our communities. So it's not that Democrats care more about undocumented people. It's just that they actually care.
Yeah, but they take Aunt Risa from our citizens. Whether they pay taxes or not, they take away resources.
What resources
housing.
are they taking?
They take away housing from our citizens. That's why housing is so expensive. They take away housing from our citizens.
Wait, what housing do you think they're taking?
It's housing all across the country.
So they shouldn't live somewhere?
Well, do you feel like people who are here, who are illegal, should be able to stay here and take up those resources?
Are you asking me if I think that people without documentation should be able to have housing?
Yeah, do you think that?
Yeah, of course. I think they should be able to pay for a home to live in. We should all be able to afford to pay for a home to live in. And it's not that people without documentation are raising the prices of housing. They're not the ones charging people for housing. They're not the landlords. They're usually renters. Some of them are homeowners, but they're not taking anything from anyone. They are also purchasers. Really, where we should be directing our ire and our frustration are the people who are marking up these prices on housing and price gouging all of us. It's not the undocumented people who are price gouging us all. It's the landlords. It's the owners. It's the banks.
Well, Aunt Risa, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but my research, according to my own research, what you're saying isn't true.
Just so in the chat, just so y'all know, this is a modeling conversation. I'm seeing the chat right now. I want y'all to understand we are modeling this conversation. This is not a real conversation. This is a demonstration of what not to do. So sorry.
Well, I want to say,
getting your information, because I'm getting my information from Associated Press, from unbiased news sources. I'm getting like factual data. I mean, look, I'm happy to share my sources. What are your sources?
Oh, well, Associated Press, and I'm sure, Aunt Risa, other information sources you read, it's probably the liberal media. It's just
Associated Press and Reuters are the two that I rely on for completely unbiased news. completely unbiased. Usually Associated Press and Reuters are the ones that all the other news sources get their stories from and then spin them. Because trust and believe, I'm with you. I do think a lot of media is incredibly biased, uses way too much spin, and really tries to, serve up whatever we want to hear, whatever will get us angry. But Associated Press and Reuters, even when it makes me mad, they're pretty unbiased, honestly.
Well, I agree with you that a lot of media is biased. I don't read the Associated Press and Reuters. I have my own sources that I think are more reliable.
What
And I
sources
do.
do you think are more reliable?
Well, I have a lot of online research that I do. I really like the site Breitbart. I think they're really accurate. They do a lot of good reporting also, a lot of good opinion, a lot of good news, very well researched.
What makes you think they're well researched?
Well, they go really in depth into stories, and their writers are unbiased also.
And in what way do you think they're not biased?
Well, because they're just telling the truth. They're telling the truth about what's happening. And that's what the liberal media doesn't do. The liberal media just spins everything for Democrats. And that's not the news sources what I do. They don't spin anything. They're just telling the truth.
See, and I see it the other way, because I see what you're talking about, sources like Breitbart, as spinning for conservatism. I see that they have a very strong spin themselves. And I think, I do agree that there is a lot of bias in media again. And I think that Breitbart is specifically and particularly biased, but for a different perspective. And like, if that's what's affirming for you, I understand. Like, we all want to be affirmed in our opinions, but what I see is that, yes, CNN, MSNBC, bias. That's deeply, strongly liberally biased. Breitbart, Fox News, I think those are very deeply, strongly, and openly conservative biased. Is that something that we can kind of like agree on?
Yeah, I would say you're probably partly right that there is some slant that some of the media that I have that I watch and I listen to, but it's America, but they're all about America first.
All right, so we're gonna stop at this part because I see your hand, Jess. So what did we do wrong? Because my goal was to do this wrong.
Yes. So
You-
I think what some of the things I noticed that I think there were things that you did that were really good and some things that were less effective. So the things that I saw that you did were good was that there was a couple moments when you redirected to punch up, like the moments of be like, oh, our housing costs are too high, who's taking the jobs? That sound that like find ways to punch up towards the billionaires is actually really important, right? Because like what I heard in that moment is like, oh, there isn't enough housing, there isn't enough art. Like, how do we make meaning of that experience for people in a way that's different than the right wing story? So that's one thing. It's like, how do we redirect a punch up to like to the billionaires? That was something I saw you do a couple times that I thought was powerful. And there were times where you asked a question, you're like, hey, where did you get this information? Why are you hearing this? I think that was good. But there's one of the things that I saw that it was very much like, this isn't wrong. Like you're wrong. Like in this way where there was little to no space for the questions. And one of the things that I also didn't hear was space for your own humanity as a person. It became about the issues versus being like, hey, I don't like that you're talking about my neighbors in a way that's really harmful and racist. Like, and like, I don't know if that's what you're intending to do, but that's how it's coming off to me. Right. And so I think I think kind of actually make room for more of your own humanity. And like that includes being a little bit vulnerable, like dang, that's some really hurtful anti-immigrant rhetoric, and I think that's like that hurts people I care about, right? And it takes the conversation less about the issues, more about the emotions and people. One of the things that we know that also doesn't always work is myth busting. It's like, here's the facts, here's the facts, here's the facts. And something I've seen so often in progressive movements, like, here's the thing that's true. Versus when like what changes people is stories and emotions. Right. And so our task is to help make meaning for people, not shove a bunch of facts into people's faces. And so I think I think those things are important to do. And I think those are some of the initial things that came to mind that made it hard. And also I think it was trying to kind of felt very intellectual versus being like, what's really the heart of the thing I care about here? And I think that's going to be important to do as we engage. And I think there's a way where like that piece where we can actually be bolder and be like, really? Like be bolder and like, I don't think that this is aligned with my value. It's that a value that you hold to? And I think that like is something that's important. So I think those are some of the things that came to mind. But I'm curious for y'all, Risa, what did you notice for yourself that was like made it feel less effective?
Yeah, I was being intentionally combative. I was approaching from a place of trying to be right, trying to be corrective, and trying to show that Rich is wrong. It's an intellectually dishonest place to come from. And also, it was intellectualized. My problem is that I am very academic. I do love data. I love research. And so for me, that is the really difficult part of the conversation to actually, scale that back. So I let that go. So that was my approach, was direct, combative, and trying to be right. And that's really ineffective. People can tell when you are in a conversation and when you are arguing just to be right. I could go on about how online debate culture has actually really ruined our ability to engage in honest discourse. But what we really want to do is find common ground. I didn't want to hear what he had to say. I wanted to correct him.
Mm-hmm.
If I may say, Risa, we pride ourselves in being informed with facts, and what you said was factually accurate. It's just that facts and policies don't move people, because we don't make our decisions on facts and policies. We make them on feelings, emotions, and perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
But your facts were spot on, and in a real conversation, you would be factually correct.
But I think that highlights the point. It doesn't matter if you're factually correct.
Doesn't.
That's not the goal. That's not what's going to move people. So why don't we move into modeling what does move people? So Rich and Jess are going to model our next conversation, and we're going to have them talk about the economy and what is effective. Rich, are you comfortable continuing to be our MAGA cousin?
Sure.
Awesome. All right. And scene.
Aunt Jess, I'm so thankful that we have President Trump in charge of our economy, because he inherited a terrible economy from Joe Biden. And my costs are down all over the country. The president is doing exactly as he promised.
I feel like, can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What's the kind of economy that you want?
Well, I want an economy where people have, and I have a chance to make a living and advance in my career. I want to see our young people be able to also advance their careers. They're saddled with all this college debt. I don't know why they went to college, but that's the kind of economy I want. I think that we have that right now.
Yeah, I also want to like an economy where we can thrive. Where folks can like be able to have a good life, have a roof over their head, be able to put food on the table, be able to also feel comfortable that there's a chance for retirement, right? And some well-being. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I just don't think that Democrats do that though. I think Democrats are just interested in taking and taking and taking, and we as MAGA supporters, we get laughed at for this, but we think that everyone should pull themselves up by their bootstraps,
Hmm.
just like our parents did, and they took care of themselves. I just want an economy where people can succeed on their own efforts, and I don't think Democrats really believe that. They just want to take.
Yeah, I hear you saying that, and I like that. Like I just want to say like I haven't experienced what you're talking about. Like when I go to the supermarket, like the eggs are still $5-6. Where I'm living at, like when it gets harder to put food on the table. And I talk to my friends who are school teachers and other folks who are just having a really hard time, right? And especially like the moment when Trump cut all the SNAP benefits, right? Like be able to help food on the table. I saw lines outside of farmers markets where people were helping people access care because they needed to find ways to get food. And I don't know. I haven't seen the economy that you're talking about coming from Trump. And I think you're also right. Like the establishment Democrats have also historically also have reinforced income inequality, right? But I think that we could probably be more secure, if we had something like Medicare for all, where we all had guaranteed health insurance. If we were able to do in our communities like what Zoran Mamdani was doing, where we're talking about being able to freeze the rent, create universal childcare, and I see these progressive champions being able to start articulating the kind of economy that I want to live in. It sounds like you want to live in too, right? But you don't have much trust in that being possible, is what I hear you saying.
Well, I think your points. I understand your points, but I don't think, Aunt Jess, that communism is really the solution for our problems. And if we're going to have communism like Medicare for all, then people aren't going to be able to get actually the health care that they need. We're just going to be like Canada, where people are waiting for years to get a surgery or to get a chance at a doctor's appointment. That's not what I want to see. I don't know why Democrats keep talking about that and want to see that.
I hear that. And like I've had friends who have waited for years to get surgery because they can't afford healthcare. Do you know friends and neighbors of yours who've had that same experience?
Well, yeah, there are some people who I I think that because they were in Democrat states, they took them a long time to get medical care. Yeah, it's
But
happened. I've seen it.
what was it, Democrat states, or was it the fact that our insurance is controlled by private companies and billionaires who want to keep on making more money off of our suffering versus making sure that everyone's needs are taken care of?
Yeah, and I can agree with that point about insurance companies. I think that they do charge too much. It didn't. I don't think that Democrats have any solutions to bring costs down, but I think I think you're right about that, Aunt Jess. I think that health insurance costs are definitely too high, and we get squeezed out as Americans when I'm happy to pay for my own health insurance, but it is expensive, and I wish that there was a better way of being able to insure people affordably.
Yeah. What what would be possible for you if healthcare was just covered with something that our government did to enhance our democracy? What would that make a difference for you and your family?
Well, I think that the government oftentimes is corrupt and doesn't really pay a lot of attention to people like you and me.
Yeah, I think that's true with a lot of elected leaders, but I think that regular folks like you and me can actually come together across differences and actually fight for like a government that does what we need to do, right? And I think we saw that across the country, where people were both rejecting Trump's claims and corporate Democrats' narrow visions for society, right? And I think that like we have a chance to really build the kind of economy that we want together, right? But that will only happen if you and I work together to make something happen, right?
Well, that's why I like Donald Trump, because I feel like he gives voice to people like me. I think he even gives voice to people like you who want the government to work better and want costs to be lower. I don't I don't think Democrats do that, and I haven't thought that they've done that for a very long time. And I have nothing against Democrats as people. I just think their policy ideas just don't really can't work in practice.
Yeah, but I think the thing I hear you saying that, right? I hear that like you want something better. The thing is that like Trump isn't gonna like I haven't seen Trump deliver that. What I've seen Trump deliver is cutting SNAP benefits while him and his friends get richer and richer to pay for a tax break that neither you or I would fit in that tax break bracket for. That's what I've seen from Trump. And like I know that you may not agree with me here on this moment, but I really think that we could get the kind of economy and healthcare that we both need if we took a different route. And so even if you're not really ready to move with me there yet, I think our task is to really work together to work to build a different kind of society. And I think that it really hurts to hear that you think that Trump is more important than me or my neighbors who also have a hard time affording healthcare.
Do we want to
I think this is a good spot.
do an analysis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Aunt
what else?
Jess, let me tell you.
Yeah. People in the comments want you to come to the holidays with them, Jess. And also, Rich, your daughter is adorable, and
I'm sorry about that.
we're
Special guest.
family people here.
Yeah, community.
So what I was hearing was a lot of affirmation at every response that Jess gave. She affirmed, "Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I don't think I've experienced that myself." But she still starts with affirmation because it keeps the door open. I think that's really effective.
Can I make a few comments if I may?
Please.
Part of my modeling with Aunt Jess is based on conversations that I've actually had with people in MAGA, and I think what amongst some other traits, what Jess did so well is actually affirm, to your point, Risa, affirm and and emphasized how there's agreement on issues. There was agreement in that conversation about healthcare costs being high and about the government not representing as well as it could all Americans. And as you were, as is said in law, leading the witness. And I'm not sure if that was consciously what you were trying to do, but my sense was I was imagining being a MAGA, the MAGA nephew, and you caught me off guard in a conversation. You caught me off guard by actually not arguing but agreeing, and because of that, it lowered the bulwarks for us to actually have more of a conversation than a debate.
Mhm.
So you did really a stellar job on that.
Thank you. Yeah. Part of what I was trying to do, one of the other things that I was attempting to do was also point to a shared vision. I think one of the things I was like, what's the economy you want to live in? Like, there's a part of the thing is actually taking it out of the myopic, like Trump versus Democrats worldview, to be like, what is the worldview that we want to live in? And my task is to continue to invite us towards a different vision of the future.
And you didn't talk down, you didn't cast aspersions on my character or question my intelligence. You didn't debate facts and policy, and I never had a feeling that you were trying to change my mind. So you were operating with some of the freedom of not trying to bait me into an argument. And you also were taking the time to try to hear from me why I believed what I believed. And that's one of the dues that we have with leaving MAGA, which is to try to understand why someone believes what they do. And I think there's a phobia about that, because people feel like if I do that, then I must be agreeing or defending or accepting what the other person believes. But we're not asking anyone to compromise their own beliefs, their principles, their mores, or their morals by trying to find out why. And it also, finding out why, can shed some insight back to Risa's conversation about their information sources.
Yeah.
And one technique that we've had some real world success is what I call information bartering, which is if I read a story or some source of information from the MAGA person, that person will also agree to read something that I provide them. And I've found that it's at least been able to move the conversation to the next step, even though there may not have been agreement on the information shared. The bartering system, at least it gave us an opportunity to open the minds of the other person, and sometimes maybe we get something that gives us a different perspective and an alternative view. So that's something that we've done as well. We have one lady whose brother was a MAGA 2024 supporter, and he recently left MAGA because she implemented a lot of these stratagems that we're talking about tonight. She was very, very patient with her brother, and her brother came to realize through conversation that his outrage was algorithmically shaped and that he was conditioned to always be angry. But that came from just lots of conversations and using these don'ts and do's.
Well, thank you both so much. This has been really helpful. I know in the chat, everyone is popping off. And I really, I really hope that we all understand that this is modeled conversation. This is just to demonstrate what to do, what not to do. But take this how you need to. Take it with you into your family situations and really try to work those pivots. So thank you both. We'll bring you both back for Q&A. I know we're going a little long tonight, but I think this conversation is really robust. So thanks for staying with us. So our next speaker is from our own team. Because these conversations may seem a little idealized, it's really easy to model these tactics with safe people because we are safe with each other. But how does that work in real practice? Kendra Seawright is a 10-year tattoo artist and organizer in Amarillo, Texas. Born and raised in conservative to extremely radical Christian spaces, she's been learning to juggle feminist values without isolating herself from her family. She is also our regional organizing fellow here at Women's March, working in rural Texas, and she'll tell us about how she is applying these tools and how effective they are. Hi, Kendra.
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be here. So I was really excited to see this modeling of conversation first and see y'all's reaction to it in the chat. It was very much an idealized conversation, and we love how calm and collected they were able to be just so that we could understand where they were all coming from. But we know that sitting down at the table, even in front of food that people have worked all day long to prepare, that's not usually the kind of respect or emotion that comes through whenever we're in a space where we feel like this is the first time I get to see this person face to face, and I'm going to get to ask them all the things that I've been really storing up. So, in my experience in Amarillo, Texas, rural Texas, closer to Abilene, these places where there's not a whole lot of space for more progressive minds to be able to speak. It's not as welcomed for sure. What I've noticed is that I've just got to step into my space and know what my values are and know that they're not just talking points. Whenever I sit down at the table, I already know that the people that I'm sitting down with are questioning me the same way that I have questions for them, like, how could you support someone that acts this way or speaks this way? They have questions for me as well. But the difference may be that we're in spaces where people like ask us questions and give us time and opportunity to answer and think it through. And we have so much diversity in our spaces that we're able to understand from different levels. Like, why do you think that way? Oh, okay. Well, that might not have been the right thing. So we grow. They're sometimes are caught, these MAGA folks are caught in this echo chamber. So they only know what they've heard about you. So whenever I go into a space, I know that they think this specific way. Well, I'm going to embrace that. And I'm going to say, well, let me show you how human I am, how normal I am, how not like this big boogeyman that you have made me out to be. We can talk about food. We can talk about the things that are going on in our day-to-day lives. But if someone comes at you and they're like, oh, well, I saw this or whatever, and it's like you're in trouble, like they're mad at you, you can distance yourself from that and say, okay, well, let's talk about it. Do you want to know my opinion on it, or can we talk about it in this way? Can we check the perspectives on this and just see where you can get in that conversation goal wise? There is this way of just debating that I think we're used to seeing on Facebook, on Twitter, or X, that's talking point. And sometimes that's all some people have. So if you say, well, what are we trying to accomplish out of this? What does that make you feel? Jess had a lot of really great points in their conversation about just being human to human. And that is what works in my experience in Texas, in New Mexico, in Oklahoma, all of these spaces. It's just reminding people that we're just doing our best. We're all just trying to figure out how to make it to the end of the day and look for our future with our families, with our kids, and that we all really do have a lot more in common than we are being told that we do. We're being told that distance between us is so vast, that the other side is so crazy. That's not true. Some of them are so angry, and some of them don't feel like they're being heard, so they just have to yell at somebody. And sometimes you're that somebody. That's horrible. And it's terrible to experience that over a holiday. Holidays have become very triggering for that reason. But take that time to ground yourself. Recognize that this is still a space where you have an opportunity to rehumanize yourself, rehumanize your point of view, and don't let them rile you up, because that is what really their goal is to agitate, to get you to start swinging and hurt as many people on the way that they can. So if you don't accept that, you've taken a lot of their power away. you can just brush it off. No, thank you. I'll actually not get up and scream at you. I'm going to just sit here and recognize that those are just words. Some of us are very privileged in that way that the harm is still just words coming at us. So just remember those breathing techniques that Risa threw out there at the very beginning of this, that Jess was talking about coming together in some core values, and that wonderful acting that Rich gave us that made us all kind of worried and triggered and get our agitator raised up. So just keep calm, take a deep breath. Don't be baited into silly talking point conversations.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Now, we have a lot of expertise here, so I'm going to bring everyone back on stage for some of your questions. And thank you all for staying a bit longer with us as we get through some of these. So we did have a lot of questions in the chat. And I want to start with this one. A habit I'm trying to build is noticing defensiveness with curiosity. What am I defending? What is the person in front of me defending? And Jess, I want to throw this to you. How can we utilize this as a tool, as a centering kind of piece as we have these conversations?
Yeah, I think it's really important to you to, like, I found in these conversations, like, what am I grounded in? Right. And so I think that this noticing this habit you're trying to build is like, oh, what's happening here for me and for other people. Right. And often in my experience, people are caring about safety, belonging, and dignity. And so our task, part of my task is one, like, how do we connect those at the same time? And I think people also, I think it's one of those things that, like, it's so instinctual to people that I think we go towards those things without even knowing that we're doing it. Yeah. And so I would say, like, the moving towards that defensiveness is, I think, important. And also, they may be defending something really harmful. Like, what they're trying to take care of they might be trying to take care of, like, a white nationalist, Christian nationalist society that is actually really harmful to me as a trans woman living in the South, to many of us, be harmful for all of us here on this call, actually, right? It would limit all of our freedoms, safety, belonging, and dignity. It would make it very precarious. And you're already living in precarious safety, belonging, and dignity for most of us. And so I think being aware of it, and also we can be like, that thing you're defending actually is hurt. Like how do we take it out of, like, intellectual and make it emotional? And at the same time, if that's not safe for us, like, it's also okay to, like, take care of your own heart, because that heart rate you're feeling, that anger you're feeling, that often that's a fight for your own dignity and a fight for dignity of other people. But we are, I know for myself that, like, when I get to the point where I'm like, I want to yell at you, like, I'm not going to be effective. It's most like, and so I think my task is, like, I'm going to go be angry and be like, I think it's good for us to stop now and exit. Bye. Stay still, be quiet. Have it, like, I think if we're going to go hang out, like, go spend time with family members who believe harmful beliefs, it's good to have an exit plan. Who are the 2 or 3 friends you're going to have on deck to text each other or give each other a phone call or leave? And so I think those things are helpful when we get to that point of deep defensiveness, and we're like, part of it because we're trying to defend something important, I think, for many of us. And so take care of yourselves.
Yeah. Now, when we do, have these conversations, it can come off as, emotional, and people love to point fingers about how, oh, you're just thinking with your emotions, you're not being logical. So, we all feel things, and really we are heavily led by the way that we feel about things. However, sometimes it is infuriating. We get angry. So Rick asks, how do I change my MAGA family perception of me as the angry liberal? Rich, would you like to start with this one?
Yeah, sure. So in some of my conversations with people in MAGA, I've not said to them, you have very strong feelings about what you believe and care about, but I've asked them, don't you also have very strong emotional feelings about what you care about? I very much don't shy away from having strong feelings and emotions because we're human beings and we all feel emotions. And when I've asked that question, usually there's a little bit of a stutter, but there's an acknowledgement that there are strong emotions and strong feelings on the part of the person, the MAGA identified person. So I think the way to make this, to try to tackle this question, is to make it very, very personal. And what I mean by that is ask that MAGA identified person, Aunt Jess, you've known me my entire life. You were like a second mother to me. Why do you know me well? Why do you feel like I am this raging, angry liberal who's pissed off about everything? And let them we talked about defense with curiosity. Let them try to defend with some curiosity the way that they answer that question. I feel like make the relationship, really lean into the relational aspect that the two relatives have, because it makes it harder to call someone to their face just an angry know nothing liberal. And it's easier to do that at a keyboard behind a screen, but it's much harder to do it in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's okay if I jump in on this point.
Yeah, please, Jess.
You may not be able to do so. I mean, I think the thing is, like, the really sad truth is that we can't control other people. Yeah. It's really hard. And so I think I think like staying your truth, like lead with like your own sense of self-worth. And like, even if that's what they're saying about you, know that you're also like, what are the values that you care about for yourself? And so that may or may not be able to change over time, but I think the idea from Rich was great, but I also wanted to just give some chance. Like, we can't control people. Like, we can do our best, and also like we have to have a deep grounding in our own self-worth and the worth of the people in the communities that we are working to win a freer world alongside. Yeah.
What's that expression? Your feelings about me are none of my business. What you think of me is none of my business. Sometimes we're just not going to change those perceptions, and people are going to have their impressions of us regardless. So I'm with you on that, Jess. I think sometimes when we can subvert those perceptions, cool, but they're going to feel the way they're going to feel. So if we can reach into each other's humanity, I think that goes a long way. Now, Kendra, I would love to throw this one to you. How would the conversation be different if/when the MAGA person attacks the non-MAGA person and starts with anger, gaslighting, and quote facts that are clearly right-wing propaganda and disinformation?
I have experienced this very recently with my dad. This was their favorite thing to do, is to tell you the facts that they heard on their Fox News or on their social media. And you just, from what I've done, is just, hey, well, let's talk about that. Let's break that fact down. Where did you get that information? And would you feel okay if I went ahead and just like Googled this right in front of you, and maybe we can just research it together? Like, let's look that up together. If you don't have any like goal here to like actually ask me these questions and tell me your facts without having a conversation, then we don't have to go any further with that. Can you just pass me the cranberry sauce? I was actually really hungry. That's what I would do, is I would just invite them to like explain it, just explain it to me in a way that the little kids at the table can understand too. Make it simple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rich, Jess, would y'all like to add?
No, I'm so with that. And I think also like if people are being actively harmful, it's like that's hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I actually like I'm not okay with that. Like, are you intending to be hurtful? And if so, like that's okay. If you know that, I'm gonna leave because I actually don't consent to that.
Pass.
And bye, bye, pass. You know, yeah.
I think it
Really
shows
the wind out of their
great.
sails.
The exit strategy shows a lot of really great restraint,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like restraint is so difficult
Yeah.
in these conversations.
Yeah. It's hard not to take the bait. And like even, understanding that can take the wind out of their sails to not react. Like
That's really
that
what
feels
they
a little bit.
That's really what they want, is a reaction.
Right.
Right. And, even my own reaction to that, like being like, oh yeah, it takes the wind out of their sails, and feeling a little excited about that. That's not necessarily healthy on my part either. It's still a competitive mindset, and it's hard to break out of. Now, what if they're not curious about you at all? Is it ever healthy to be curious about them in that space? I think, Jess, I see you moving with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about other people's spot. I think if they aren't showing up with curiosity towards you, I think that's like, that's information, right? And I think I have my first sake of being curious about them is about something that's a little bit different. My first sake of being curious for them in that moment is being like, I want to know why you got so disconnected. And my curiosity is like, I'm here because I believe that you probably have a stake in believing something closer to what I believe than you might know right now. And that's my rationale for my curiosity, so I can be more effective. And if they're unable to meet you there and unwilling to move, then like we might not be the right person to do it, but we gave it a shot, and then we can step out, eat the cranberry sauce, And I think that's important. And I think I really want to uplift this point that's up here on the banner. Like you can't reach everyone, so some folks won't have this conversation. That's totally true. And to focus and put your energy more towards the people who will meet you there. I think that's so rich and so true. Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, I don't know if other folks have any other ideas about that piece about curiosity, Kendra or Rich.
If we made it into a game, so to speak, I know that it's a big ask of friends and family to try to go high when others go low. But if there's no curiosity on the part of the other person, and we play a little game, for lack of a better word, where we try to delve a little bit deeper into why they lack that curiosity and what it is again that they believe, maybe from that action that is initiated, maybe like Jess is saying, that it could open up a conversation that maybe didn't exist. But no one is under any obligation to have to create curiosity if it's not reciprocated.
That's
Kendra?
true. I would say just maybe beforehand, because I'm thinking of all the really daunting conversations that we're going to have at our table, and years past, what's that sounded like? Do I have any like questions for them specifically that are really important to me? Because otherwise, I might be laying a trap for myself to get into an argument. I do want to be curious, and I do want to meet you where you are, and I want to understand where you're coming from. But if you ask it in a wrong way or a pointed way, they're immediately up for defensiveness, and then we're right back here into an argument. So maybe think about what you would ask someone and kind of picture how that conversation goes in your head a little bit, and just kind of practice.
And I think something that we do as humans is that we mirror the behaviors of other people around us too. And even if we start off with someone who isn't curious about us, I think the more we model that and that we demonstrate that and just operate from that place, it becomes a community standard among the people that we're dealing with.
Mhm.
It's hard for people to keep being combative when the person that they're being combative at isn't reacting and is instead yes anding them into a place of authenticity. So I think there's a balance to be struck, but I think if we're the ones who start that tone of curiosity, some people will pick up on it and will carry that through as well.
Mhm.
All right. This has been incredible. These have been a lot of great questions from the chat. Thank you all. Thank you, Rich, Jess, Kendra, for offering your expertise and your incredible minds and hearts in this conversation tonight. And of course, thank you all for joining us tonight here in the chat on YouTube, on Facebook, on X. Make sure you check your email. If you registered, we will send you an email with any resources that we discussed tonight, as well as the video if you want to watch this back and replay and study. Finally, of course, safe travels. Keep your peace, but I hope that you have fantastic conversations with your family and that you build bridges this holiday season. So thank you again for being here with us. Good night.